The ASICS Metaspeed Sky Paris has quickly become one of my favorite carbon-plated running shoes for race day. A couple of months ago, I made a video comparing this to the Alphafly 3, where I was going to choose one of those shoes for my PR attempt in the half marathon. I ended up going with the Metaspeed Sky Paris, and I'm glad I did. I was able to get that PR in the half marathon. I've also set a PR in the mile in blue jeans with this shoe, and I've done a couple 5K races with this shoe. But apart from race day, I've also been enjoying this shoe as an up-tempo workout shoe as I train for that sub 3-hour marathon in the fall. And more recently, as of yesterday, I've put 100 miles on the Metaspeed Sky Paris. So today, I want to do a quick review of the ASICS Metaspeed Sky Paris after 100 miles. Now, a quick disclaimer before I get into the review of the shoe. I did purchase this with my own money. ASICS did not send me the shoe. ASICS probably doesn't even know who I am and will most likely never see this video. So the opinions on the Metaspeed Sky Paris are mine and mine alone. Another thing to take into consideration really quick with this shoe review, I am 5 foot 10 inches tall and I weigh anywhere from 165 to 170 pounds on any given day. So again, just take that into consideration when I'm talking about different aspects of this running shoe. All right, so now let's get into the 100-mile review of the ASICS Metaspeed Sky Paris. Really quick, one of the main reasons I wanted to make this video was because with race day shoes, they're typically really expensive, you know, that $200+ range, usually $250 and above. And if you're like me, you want to try and get the most out of your race day shoe, whether that's with racing and then moving it to becoming a workout shoe, or you just try and race it until the wheels fall off. Either way, you want to get the most out of that expensive shoe. And so I wanted to give an update of how the shoe is holding up at 100 miles and whether or not I would still recommend it as a race day shoe for your running shoe rotation. All right, so because this is a 100-mile review of the ASICS Metaspeed Sky Paris, I'm not gonna get too into the weeds with the tech specs, but I will go over each component of the shoe if this is the first time you're seeing a review for the Metaspeed Sky Paris. So the upper is what ASICS calls the Motion Wrap 2.0. I'm not actually sure what the material is made of. I believe it's an engineered mesh or something along those lines. The midsole is the Flight Foam Turbo Plus. So it is a new midsole compound that is now a PIBA-based compound. And then with the Sky Paris, as you can see, the plate runs a little closer to the foot. And then for the outsole, you have the ASICS Grip Rubber. I purchased this shoe in a US men's 10.5, and it fits true to size. And the weight at that 10.5 at 100 miles is 195 grams. All right, so with those quick tech specs out of the way, I want to actually get into each component of the shoe and how it's held up over 100 miles. And then finally, I'll give my verdict on whether I believe this is a good running shoe to add to your rotation for race day. All right, so we'll start with the upper of the shoe. At 100 miles, the upper has held up really well considering how minimal this upper is. There is almost nothing going on with this upper. The heel counter is almost non-existent. It's extremely thin. There's almost no padding through the heel and the ankle collar. The tongue is literally just like almost a piece of paper. It is so thin and it's only stitched in pretty much through here on the top of your like forefoot. And then this upper, as you can see, is extremely breathable and extremely thin. So surprisingly, I've had no issues with the upper, no tearing along any part of the upper forefoot. There's no type of separation as well between the upper and the midsole at 100 miles. One thing I will say that I'm not a huge fan of with the upper is that I do get some bunching through the forefoot, almost the midfoot right here. You can kind of see it on the shoe where there's some bunching. So when I tie it and try and get a good lockdown, I just get some bunching through the forefoot. I mean, it's nothing terrible. It's not anything I notice when I'm running, but it's just something that's a minor nuisance. Pretty much been there with the shoe since day one. So if you're someone who really doesn't like your upper bunching up, just note that most likely this will happen with the shoe. Another thing I'm not a huge fan of with this shoe is obviously the tongue being just stitched in right here. It can be hard when you're putting the shoe on and getting it tied down to get the tongue to lay flat on your foot while also trying to get that good lockdown with the shoe. Once the tongue is in and I've got the shoe laced up and locked down, I have no issues with the tongue. So it's really just kind of trying to get that fit in the first place. So that's just always something I kind of worry about when I'm lacing it up. But again, if I were to do any knocks on the upper, it would really just be that bunching. And then, like I said, that really loose tongue, just trying to get it good and flat when I'm lacing up the shoe. But other than that, at 100 miles, this Motion Wrap 2.0 upper has done exactly what I need it to do. Honestly, this upper could probably go 300 to 400 miles easy and probably have no issues. All right, so now moving on to what I believe is one of the major highlights of the shoe, the midsole. So how is the midsole held up at 100 miles? Obviously, this is going to be the hugest component in how long the shoe will actually last and how much you'll actually be able to get out of that $250 that you're spending for this shoe. And I am happy to report that at 100 miles, the midsole shows almost no real wear. You do have some kind of like creasing from the compression of the shoe. You have it throughout the interior, and then you can kind of see it through the yellow here. I'm not sure how it's showing up on camera, but I do have your normal compression kind of creasing that you would see in a midsole, but it's nothing that I would be too concerned about. The way the midsole actually responds at 100 miles is still phenomenal. I will say there was a point at like 70 miles where I felt like I had almost lost a little bit of pop with the shoe. Like it almost felt like the midsole went a little flat, and I wasn't sure if maybe the plate was losing some of its firmness from just that compression over time, or if maybe the midsole with this new PIBA based midsole, which is a little softer at first step in, it breaks in a little quicker than the Flight Foam Turbo. I didn't know if maybe this new midsole compound mix just maybe kind of flattened out a little bit sooner than the older Flight Foam Turbo with that nylon based. But I'm happy to say that yesterday's run that put this over 100 miles was a 90-minute thirds progression run. And the last 30 minutes were a 6:13 to a 5:58 minute mile, with the last 10 minutes being at roughly a 5:56 minute mile. My treadmill couldn't do 5:58, so it was either like a 6:03 or 5:56. So I went to 5:56, and this shoe held up great. So I'm crediting the flatness at mile 70, like to being more just that maybe my fitness had taken a little bit of dip. And that's more what I was feeling, is maybe just some fatigue and like, I don't know, just maybe being tired as to why the shoe felt a little flat. But like I said, that 13-mile run that I did yesterday, those 90 minutes, the shoe felt phenomenal from like an 8:13 minute mile pace all the way down to that 5:56. It felt great through the entire run. I absolutely love how responsive this midsole is. And personally, I really enjoy with this new midsole compound the Sky's plate placement. So I'm not sure how this shoe would feel in the edge where the plate takes that like lower placement in the forefoot. But the way the placement is with that 5 millimeter drop and then the placement of that plate being higher up, I feel like it almost gives me a similar sensation to what the Alpha Fly does in terms of how the shoe kind of just lands and just how quickly your foot turns over in this shoe. When I actually compared this to the Alpha Fly in that original video, I ran with one shoe on each foot and then I swapped to see if maybe it felt the same or different on like the left versus the right. And the one thing I noticed then, and I still feel is pretty prominent when I run like in my Alpha Fly 2s versus this, is just how effortless all of my foot strikes are. Even when I get late into like a run and get into those higher miles, even in my half marathon on the PR attempt, where the last 2.5 miles were all uphill, the shoe just turns over so quickly and is so efficient with how fast your just turnover goes and how lightweight it is and how responsive it is, that it makes the whole package amazing. Even at 100 miles, I'm still absolutely in love with the way this shoe just works and how effortless it makes my runs feel, even at those faster paces. And I'm excited to see how far I can push this midsole in terms of longevity, because like I said, it's holding up pretty well, and I'm hoping that it doesn't just like completely die at like 150 miles. I'm hoping I can get like 300 plus out of this midsole, but we'll see. All right, and the last component I want to talk about at 100 miles with the shoe is the outsole. Like I said, this is the ASICS Grip rubber. It's a phenomenal rubber that works really well in pretty much all conditions. The only conditions I haven't taken the shoe in is snow, but I ran in rain, mud. I've run in super hot weather, kind of cool fallish weather. I've run on the treadmill, dirt, gravel, pavement, kind of everything with the shoe. And the rubber on this has held up extremely well. That is one thing I had kind of a worry about with the other versions of the Metaspeed Sky. so both the original and the Plus, was the rubber that the ASICS used on this, even though the like rubber coverage was pretty much the same, it just didn't feel as secure. Like I always wondered on those like rainy days, I kind of felt like my foot strikes, I had to be a lot more cautious, which kind of slowed me down because I just didn't trust that the rubber was going to give me the traction I needed on wet days. But luckily with the Sky Paris, that issue is resolved. The rubber on this is great. You do have your kind of normal wear. I don't know if you can actually see this on the camera, but you do have normal wear, or I'm having normal wear throughout the shoe, as you can see. And then I have some wear here as well, and then wear along this rubber part as well. So your normal wear, I am wondering how well this will hold up if I do try and push this shoe to like 300 plus miles. If this will start to be the component that falls apart, if it's not the midsole, is that the rubber, it's designed for race day. It's not meant to just take miles and miles of a beating. And so I am curious, like, will this piece eventually fall out? Will this start to wear down where it starts to get into the midsole? And then will this wear down as well? One thing I will say that is a positive compared to some other race day shoes I've run in is that the exposed midsole at 100 miles, other than some discoloration, there's really no deterioration of the midsole. I was super concerned that like this part here and then this was just going to be absolutely shredded by 100 miles, and that was going to be one of the main components that made me have to retire the shoe sooner than later, because with some other race day shoes, I've had that issue by 100 miles. This is just all shredded up and it starts to break down extremely fast at that point, to the point that you really can't get many more miles out of it. But I'm happy to say that this entire outsole has held up extremely well at 100 miles. And honestly, I'm pretty sure I can at least get 200 miles out of this shoe. Like I can confidently say I think I can get this to 200 without having too many concerns. I don't know, maybe it starts to break down quick after 100 miles, but I think I can get about 200 before I'd start to have to like check the shoe before each run to make sure the outsole is still feeling good, or maybe just question if I should take the shoe on like a rainy day, or if it's like really muddy out, or if there's snow through the winter. This might be then relegated to like a treadmill or dry day only running shoe. But I think I can get it to 200 miles confidently without much concern. And so far at 100 miles, the ASICS Metaspeed Sky Paris has held up extremely well. I'm pleasantly surprised at how good the shoe has held up at 100 miles, and I'm really excited to see how far I can push the shoe. So with all of that out of the way, the only question left is, would I recommend the ASICS Metaspeed Sky Paris as your running shoe for race day? Yes, a resounding yes, with kind of like an asterisk. Well, I'll throw an asterisk up here next to the yes. Up to the half marathon, which that's what I've taken to the shoe to. I've taken it actually farther. I believe I've taken it to 18 miles, if I remember correctly. It might be 16. So I've taken it farther than the 13, but I took it to 13 at a really fast clip where I was really going all out. And up to the half marathon, I would say resounding yes. I can't make the words on here bigger. I'll make the yes fit the whole screen, but it's a resounding yes up to the half marathon. For the marathon, it still is a yes, but like I said, there's the asterisk with that yes, and really it just comes down to that narrow platform. If you're not a really experienced or advanced runner where you kind of have done multiple marathons, you know how you respond in a marathon. If you're newer like me, and all of this is still new, I think this is only my 5th marathon. So if you're kind of a newer person like me and you know there's more likelihood that things might fall apart, this narrow platform is just one of those that, like I said, I don't think it's going to be an issue on race day for the full marathon, but it could be an issue. So that's why, like I said, I'll say it's a yes for a race day, especially that marathon distance, but I'll just say be aware that with the narrow platform, you could end up having issues with the shoe, and it could be a shoe that you absolutely love up to, who knows, mile 20 of the marathon, and then absolutely hate for the last 10K. So would I recommend the shoe? Yes. But like I said, just be aware of this. It's definitely a shoe I would recommend taking to quite a distance in your training to make sure that you know this shoe will work on race day. Past 100, would I use it for my like A goal races? Probably not. I'd probably buy a fresh pair of the shoes. But any other race where I'm just trying to go out and have fun, maybe like I said, pick up the pace a little bit or do some good workouts, this is a shoe I would definitely recommend.